Welcome on back and gather round, gang. It's time for some more Total War Warhammer 3. We are back with some more Tides of Torment early access. Huge thank you to Creative Assembly for providing me here with this so I can show you all Tides of Torment early. That way you can decide for yourself if this is a content pack you'd like to pick on up. Today we are going to be taking a look at Team Socially Unacceptable and seeing what Slaanesh is bringing to the table. We'll begin with our lords and heroes, so we'll start off with our six-armed snake lady herself, Dchala, which... Actually, while Dchala looks great, I do think, if we put her right here next to this Druchii Annointed, I think she should be a little bit larger. In our trailer, we had her absolutely towering over the princess she was about to give the old six-arm stab to, so slightly larger model for Dchala would be great. She doesn't need to be an actual large model like the Steeds of Slaanesh, but just make her a slight bit bigger, that way she makes sense. Either way, Dchala is an absolute monster in melee. She has a shield because she's so good at just swinging those swords around, so she's blocking 40% of all small arms fire headed her way. Not much armor because it's Slaanesh, you don't need armor. It hinders things such as movement and looking great. We've got huge combat stats. 69, nice, and then 60 on the defense, with 75 speed, so she moves around the map at the speed of lightning and is going to hit like a truck when she gets there. Also, we've got 30 bonus V infantry as she blends her way through anyone in her path, and then 45 charge bonus, which is nice. That'll get doubled due to the devastating flanker bonus, as all of the Slaanesh March will have. For her abilities, we get to kind of switch between these different stances. We have the Dance of Destruction, which will be dealing more damage at the cost of half of your melee defense, so taking 60 down to 30, for dealing 25% more damage. It's an interesting one. It goes on a 30-turn cooldown after you use it, but it's mutually exclusive, so you basically can switch between these different stances, and they'll be doing different things. Similar to what Festus the Leechlord has, but in more of a combat stance thing, as opposed to elixirs of nasty, bubbling bio waste. So we've got the secondary one being the Whirlwind of Pleasure, so she can't move, and will just whirl around and kill everything around her. It's very similar to what you get for the Whirlwind of Blades with good old... Snickage, but she has double the blades, so it should be dealing double the damage, of course, right? Right. Weak versus single combatant, of course, but good at getting her out of trouble in a hurry. This is going to be mutually exclusive with the dances. This is an activated ability that goes off, blends everyone up, and then it goes on cooldown. Her secondary dance / kind of stance ability is the Praise ability of Slaanesh. Slicing that out, because I'm not sure if I'm supposed to mention that. The secondary stance of our stance that we have access to is the Praise of Slaanesh here, which is going to increase our melee defense by 50%, give us more missile block chance by 20, and then drop our attack by half. This is very good for getting into the thick of things, and blocking any of those kind of missiles that Cathay or any of your missile-heavy factions might have to try to stop Dchala from getting too close. While she does block 40% of missile fire, low armor means focus fire is always a problem, especially for any of your Slaaneshi lords, which they don't have the most health, and they really rely on their resistances and their combat stats. Our third stance is the Dagger Dance. This is going to grant you 40 more armor, 25% ward save at the cost of 25% of your damage, and 25% of your bonus versus infantry. It's if you need to stay alive in a hurry and get out of dodge. Good for that, though, if you need it. I guess we can read the flavor text for each of these two. Battle provides the stage to please one's master, where sensuous movements and the eerie whistling of whirling blades entrances followers into heedless destruction. Whether sinuously squeezing life out of her thralls or rushing gleefully into the fray, Dchala revels in her feats of pain and misery. Next we have the Dark Prince's servants are eternally bound to his whims. Those same whims at times dictate that he simply set them loose. So it is with his favorite servant, Dchala. Hypnotizing gyre of flashing blades too fast to follow, denying any desperate attack and inspiring Dchala's followers to feats of battlefield grace to win their mistress's favor. Several cuts here in this video, apologies all, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit after all of the recording this week. The next is her item Elixir of Damnation, which has 3 uses, and is going to imbue her with said same named ability. So that's going to drop whoever she comes into contact with, their attack by 100%, remove their ability to cause terror, immune to psychology, and fear. To Dchala, you are nothing. A force feeding of Dchala's hideous poison thrusts her victims into the grip of pain and ecstasy, without the will or wherewithal to oppose her. you shall be struck down. They don't lose their melee defense, but they lose any of their abilities to actually strike back. She has wounds, she's got encourage, can hide in forests, has Strider if she's marked by Slaanesh, immune to psychology, that devastating flanker as we've mentioned before. Anyone with the mark of Slaanesh, you can just assume they're going to be immune to psychology, have Strider, physical resistance, and more speed. It usually is 5 more speed and 5% physical resistance, which it's a small amount, but it still counts. She has Siege Attacker as a legendary lord and can cause terror because just look at her. And Dchala is excellent, but now we shall move on to our generic lords, the Sorcerer Lord of Slaanesh, where here is your one marked of Slaanesh, the lore of Slaanesh, and then your lore of Shadows. They're slightly different, they have slightly different staves, and their plumes are different colors, so not as varied as some of your other lords for the different variants, which is a little bit unfortunate, but they still look, I think they look incredible. Continuing with the kind of Roman or Greco-Roman motif, for the Slaanesh units, their blades are a bit blurry for some reason. I'm guessing there's something going on with the VFX there, which turns them into Minecraft blades. That just lets them cut even further because no one can see them. Slaanesh Sorcerer Lords, very high armor, very good melee attack and defense. They are very elite melee mages. These guys are actually going to stick into fights, and that you are going to see them win duels against other lords that you might not see a mage normally win. They have, like I said, good armor, decent speed, magical attacks, soporific musk attacks. They're going to be dropping anyone they are coming into contact with attack and defense by 5, further boosting their dueling potential as a mage. In terms of any special abilities they have that set them apart, they have the Black Tongue activated ability, which has a 200-meter range, which honestly is a extremely long ways, and will silence an opponent for 21 seconds. This Slaaneshi Lord's noxious combination of herbs magically sublimates a pungent and debilitating aroma that quite literally strangles the tongue from apparently 200 meters away, which being silenced means you use no abilities and can cast no spells. This is scary no matter if you're a spellcaster or just a very strong hero or legendary hero that has abilities you'd like to use in melee. You're going to be doing none of that. Makes your Slaaneshi sorcerers, frankly, the scariest sorcerers of Chaos in my opinion. Got your normal Lore of Shadows for this one, of course, and then they have the Paragon of Excess passive, which is going to drop melee attack for enemies in range. That pairs very nicely with Soporific Musk for a 10 total melee attack drop. They also have the Infernal Puppet character ability, which is going to make enemies in range have a 50% miscast chance. That is terrifying. Coaxed into combat by a Lord of Slaanesh, there is no telling what you might witness. Yet, one thing is certain, you will be at your wit's end, and he shall be at yours. Gross. They encourage, they've got immune to psychology and 5% resistance as they are marked by Slaanesh. And they have 15% physical resistance as well, or missile resistance as well, because why not? These guys are great. Fantastic. They can be mounted on a horse, a thrall, a steed of Slaanesh, which is the brand new boob snake. These things are monsters when they come charging through. It's similar to seeing someone mounted on a Rot Knight. You know you're going to have a bad time. Just is not quite the same kind of bad time as what the Rot Knights can bring. Mounting a Sorcerer on this makes them very scary. Changes their damage to more armor piercing. They already have pretty decent stats, but this boosts their melee defense a little bit more. I don't think it grants them any more armor, no. But then they gain 100 speed, so they are very fast. And the devastating flanker passive, so 100 charge bonus as long as you're slamming into the flanks. Steeds of Slaanesh are so good. Then lastly, you can get them mounted on a War Shrine of Slaanesh, which is going to have the Soul Feeder passive for granting them heals anytime they are casting spells. And then also, they will have the Giver of Torturer's Glory, which as entities are dying nearby, it is going to have a Mortis Drain effect, which this was my favorite of all of the War Shrines, but we'll see if it still is. They also have the Favor the Ruinous Powers for 10 additional leadership in that same area. Very good for your lords. Our free LC Lord is going to be the Masque of Slaanesh, eternally dancing, and she gets away with it just by kind of swaying a bit. She doesn't quite have the moves of Warzag, I will say. Warzag's still the dance king. The Masque, however, forever marked by mischance brought forth through her mastery of dance and pantomime, the Masque's affliction is blissful and dreadful to behold. She has fairly low health, low armor of course, pretty decent speed, really good at dueling stats, as all Slaaneshi lords do. a 25 bonus for infantry that deals majorly armor-piercing damage because of these horrendous crab claws, and then 50 charge bonus, which she doesn't have devastating flanker to start, which is interesting. She's gonna have a slippery, the passive, heroic killing blow, the Dance of Dreaming, which is another kind of stance effect, where you can select between this, the Waltz of Lethargy, and the Chanson of Caging. So the Dance of Dreaming is going to be a mortar strain effect, dealing damage to all those around, and dropping their leadership as well, which is a very good combo. We'll skip the item for a moment to go on to the other two stances. We have the Chanson of Caging, which is another hex, where if you are an ally, or you are the Masque herself, you'll gain more speed and missile resistance, and if you're an enemy, you'll lose speed and drain your stamina. Just a very good one to switch to if you're trying to close the gap and you don't want to get shot up in the process. Her final stance is the Waltz of Lethargy, which, if you are herself or an ally, you'll gain more attack, and if you're an enemy, you lose attack. It's very simple, and probably not one that I'm going to be using unless we're dueling with a lord that is just slightly stronger than her, or something similar. That way you gain that slight bump, but truthfully, I'm going to probably keep it on the Dance of Dreaming in most cases to drain health and leadership. Her item is the Staff of Masks, which has two uses. And if you are her, you will gain a bit of heals and stamina recharge. And if you're an enemy, you will take a chunk of damage and lose some stamina. How that will work is you will select one enemy, they will take damage and drain vigor, and then you will heal and recharge your own. Basically, like you're stealing the health and the stamina from your very foes. A mesmeric whirling of flickering golden masks and flowing, strained limbs draws foes into the mask's unholy pageant, pushing them to bone-weary agony. Like the other Slaanesh marked, the Masque has Strider for ignoring those terrain penalties, 20% physical resistance for kind of warding off some of that damage, an attack, walled settlements without waiting to build up siege equipment, and then causes fear. Is a demon as well, so if she does have her leadership broken, she is going to disintegrate away quite quickly, so you do want to keep an eye on leadership. Unlike Dchala, who is a pure duelist-style character, I would consider the Masque a kind of pseudo-duelist, pseudo-support. So very good at keeping her own units kind of buffed up, while also dueling with most characters. She's just not going to be the absolute best at either. Still, a very, very fun lord. Moving on to our hero choices, we have my favorite of the bunch, the Druchii Annointed. Equipped with the longest greatsword I have seen on an elf, and completely drained of any light life or happiness. Look, they've even got darkness kind of bleeding out of their eyes. They look eerie, and they look incredible. Druchii Annointed are awesome. They are more or less your Slaaneshi lore masters of Hoeth. They're very, very good in combat. They are more offensively focused. Let's see if it'll let me actually show you here. There we go. Good armor, decent leadership, 45 speed puts them ahead of most elves, which is really, really good. They've got 60 melee attack, 42 defense, so they're more of an assassin, less of a duelist, and more of a, I'm going to get in there and beat the smack out of you. If you have higher defense than them, that's going to be the one thing that's going to make your Druchii Annointed struggle. They do, though, have a 30 bonus for infantry and a majority armor-piercing damage for chunking through any kind of more thick targets. We'll have a brief cut just to make sure I'm not breaking any kind of embargoes here. You'll notice they have a kind of blended lore here, a blend of Slaanesh and dark spells. I'll see if I can get a battle going before too long here with one that's all fully kitted out. Anointed, that is, but you'll notice that, like I said, they use spells that are not going to be draining from your winds pool. They have bound spells, which is both good. It has its positives and its negatives. Your Anointed will have the Murderous Mastery passive, which will trigger when they hit more than 40 kills. For 120 seconds, they will boost their melee attack and charge bonus by 15%, and then their leadership by 8. They encourage those around them, can hide in forests, have Strider, immune to psychology, 5% physical resistance, 15% missile, and can cause fear. You can also then mount them on a cold one to give her even more speed, as well as a little bit more charge bonus and armor. Or you could mount her on a Steed of Slaanesh as well. Which, man, that looks fairly uncomfortable. But this greatsword long enough that you can strike people from the back of this great big snake, which granting her a snake monster doesn't really change her attack at all. What it's going to do is going to grant even more speed, more charge bonus, and then give you the devastating flanker passive. So as long as you're hitting someone on the flank, you get 100 charge bonus, making her then at that point A very good duelist. Love the Druchii Annointed, and I try to slot one into every army that one makes sense. Next we have our cone-headed Slaaneshi Exalted hero, which again just looks utterly incredible. Look at the gilded crab claw, as you can tell they're exalted. The cone head helmet that they've stolen from some poor unfortunate asser, or maybe they had themselves when they were transformed, and then they've got goat legs, as one does. All gilded up, they are very ornate. They can be mounted on a horse, a steed of Slaanesh, and a chariot, and we all know what each of these do differently by now. Chariot, better at blending through infantry. Steed of Slaanesh, good at just doing everything. And then the horse for just more speed, and because you got no choice when you have that. Equipped with a whip too, huh? So they're a whip and a crab claw infantry. Let's take a look at their stats and show you how their role kind of makes sense. Cuttingly cruel in their blade work, endlessly subtle in their demagoguery, and unmatched by champions of other chaos gods in perversity of pride. And they are indeed. They've got really good armor at 90, a silver shield for blocking lots of missiles, decent speed at 42, but this is actually going to be slower than Druchii Annointed and most of your other Slaanesh units, so they actually work very well in tandem with your mortals, which are slower naturally as well. They got 55 on both attack and defense, making them, like your other Slaanesh units, a very decent duelist, and poison attacks to weaken enemies and slow them down. Because they're equipped with a whip, that's where that poison attacks are coming from, and then they are majority base weapon damage, so they're not going to be dealing as much to any kind of armored targets, at least not in this base form. 35 charge bonus also shows that they're more of a defensive unit than your more offensive other heroes, which fills a nice role there. They're more of an anchor in a tank. They've got Deadly Onslaught, the Disarm passive, which is going to be dropping damage and melee attack of all enemies in range, as long as they're a lord or hero, so makes them very good at assisting your other duelists at beating the smack out of other lords and heroes, because they look so good from afar. Because obviously, look at this face. It's them Scottish pheromones. They have the Glamour of Slaanesh passive as well, which can be dropping in melee attack, all sorts of debuffs. They have Expert Charge Defense, so no kind of attacker is too large or too small. They'll accept y'all. They've got Strider, Immune to Psychology, Charge Reflection for dealing more damage to those charging attackers that are hitting them, and then 5% physical resistance thanks to their Mark of Slaanesh, 15% missile, and actually are a siege attacker, so will allow you to attack city gates immediately, which is honestly a pretty good trait to have on just your normal hero like this. Kind of a surprise. As you know, horse makes you faster, steed makes you faster, and gives you... Oh, do they not have Devastating Flanker with the steed? That seems strange. And unintended. May have to get in touch with ZA about that. They should definitely be getting Devastating Flanker on the steed, and then the chariot is just granting you that bonus infantry of 20, so you can blend through a little bit easier. I don't think I'm going to ever use the chariot. It's either going to be the steed or on foot. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have this devilish-looking psychopath, Styrkaar of the Swordsvanar. He is our legendary lord for Slaanesh. He's got the human skin banner, the human skin stretched over his shield. He also has good old goat legs, because how else to get around without on cloven hoof? Obviously, for Styrkaar's flavor text, we have those who stand at Styrkaar's side in battle are guaranteed victory. Yet what truly puts their strength to the test is the celebratory feast afterwards. He's very similar to your Exalted Heroes of Slaanesh. He's got good armor, decent shield, lower stats than you kind of expect with 45 and a 60, so he's more defensively statted, and he has Soporific Musk for debuffing enemies. 500 weapon strength is pretty dang high, but it is a majority base weapon damage, so he will also struggle against your heavily armored foes, and a low charge bonus, again, kind of shows that he is a defensively statted Slaaneshi legendary hero here. He's got Foe Seeker, Deadly Onslaught, the Sonic Boom activated ability, which comes from one of his items here, which is going to be granting him that Sonic Boom explosion for disorienting enemies, blasting them away from him, and allowing him to either get away or find a new, more juicy target that has now been disoriented for 22 seconds, which is going to drop speed by 30%, melee defense by 4, and melee attack by 6. Like I said, good for getting away from a threat, or for debilitating a threat the second you get there. His next ability is Demonic Whispers. A demonic presence seems to influence Styrkaar and those around him, bending their will to give him thanks and praise even as he disembowels them. You will thank Styrkaar for that gut wound. It is an ability that allows you to buff up either an ally or himself with 16 more leadership and the ability to cause terror and fear. Good for getting rid of an enemy unit in a hurry or causing one of your demons that might be trying to run to stick in and fight for a bit longer. His next passive is going to be Glorious Slaughter, which states, when the flock breaks and the lambs scatter, that's when slaughter truly becomes a delight. This passive is enabled only when there's an enemy routing or broken unit within range, which is going to grant him more speed, charge bonus, and melee attack. He's just much better at running down those that might try to break and run before him. He also has the Chaos Armor passive, which is going to grant melee damage reflection and a missile block chance. Good for both reflecting damage back and dodging missiles. His final ability is the Sign of Depravity, which shall increase in intensity as enemy units are fleeing or wavering around him. This is going to buff up ally speed up to 75%, which is absolutely massive. Give them 8 leadership, which is much less so. And then for the enemies in the area, they're going to lose speed up to 75% and melee defense up to 16. Insane for rounding up foes, or if just a few of them start to break, that is going to turn the tide of the battle almost like that. The melee defense starts to drop, and then those blades start biting in. Like our others, he has Encourage, Hiding Forest, Strider, Immune to Psychology, 5% resistance, and 15% missile resistance, and then the Siege Attacker. He can be mounted on a Steed of Slaanesh, which is going to give him a little bit more health, more speed, and more charge bonus, as well as granting him the Devastating Flanker passive, or he can be mounted on a Demonic Steed, which is going to go even further, granting him armor-piercing damage, even more charge bonus, and even more speed. You got your minor speed bump, which is actually more like a cold one now, and then your major speed bump with the snake monster. Also, it looks like when he is up on the Demonic Steed, there is actually that demonic presence that's mentioned in his one of his abilities, following him around, so he's got a Ghastly moving into battle with him. That's pretty cool. Styrkaar is very good. He's just a good all-round legendary hero that I can't really talk too much more about just yet because the FLC stuff isn't out yet and I can't show you his skills. We'll discuss that then. Moving on to our units. Starting with our Slaangors, our Slaanesh-marked dual-wielding Gors. They look a little bit like Gors. I think they kind of look more humanoid, even ever so slightly, than your normal Gors, or they're just veiled and they've got this Mark of Slaanesh on their forehead. These are the ones where normal beastmen are going to be bad enough, but if they have the Mark of Slaanesh, you know you're in for a very bad time. It's like Slaanesh-marked Vikings. We've got 30 armor on these lads, which is actually more than your normal Gors. They've got 50 speed, which is very quick for a beastman infantry. They've got 34 attack, 28 defense, which is pretty decent. And then they have a 8 bonus versus infantry, so they'll bite even harder against any kind of small units, which their dual weapons are going to help with. Got 32 charge bonus, which is really not bad. And you'll notice no devastating flanker down here. So what these guys are meant to do is charge straight into the fray and then take benefit from the Pleasure through Pain passive, which is going to build up its intensity as the unit takes damage. This will grant them more speed up to 30%, charge bonus 16, and 8 more melee attack. So as they take damage, they are going to be a more punchy unit that moves even faster. And then they have, of course, the Primal Fury passive as Beastmen, which is like a kind of smaller, or at least a different version of Frenzy, where they have 5 attack, immune to psychology, more charge bonus, and more speed, which is all good stuff for a unit you're going to be basically throwing into the front line, more or less ignoring and letting it take that damage. That way it deals more damage in the future. They're just a good unit. You can fire and forget them. They've got Strider, they've got immune to psychology, they've got Woodsman for passing through trees just fine, which Strider and Woodsman's an interesting combo. So maybe they can just teleport through trees like they don't exist, and then Strider just allows them to ignore any kind of penalties from water. Kind of an interesting blend. And then they have 5% physical resistance due to that Mark of Slaanesh. Like I said, this is your frontline infantry for any mortal Slaanesh armies. You throw them in, you let them fight, and then you let your other units kind of circle around. It's a different style as opposed to just kind of holding the line with heavy armor. Next up, we have our Devotees of Slaanesh, which these are dark elves that have fallen a little bit too far. Surrender your souls. Just imagine a dark elf shade that has taken the art of dueling to its absolute finest, and then you've got your Devotees of Slaanesh. Some dark elves have long ago realized that murder's finality cannot compare to the sweetness of endless torture. Indeed, you've got 80 dark elves in this bunch, very low armor as you'd expect, really low speed too for a unit of Slaanesh at 35, 42 melee attack, 44 defense, and then 40 weapon strength with 10 bonus V infantry. They're very good at chopping their way through infantry. I actually think one of the big issues, though, with Slaanesh in this DLC is they decided to give the Slaangors the same kind of role that your Devotees have. These are obviously a more generic, more expendable version of, and that moves a lot faster. But the Druchii are going to be a more elite infantry blender. Which is kind of interesting that we have so many bonus V infantry targets or choices when we don't really have any. We have just the Marauders with spears in terms of bonus V large. So maybe instead of your dual weapons, these have. Great Big Grudge said it first, but they have javelins or something of the sort, some kind of missile weapon that is anti-large focused. That would be cool. But that's not what we got, so we shall deal. Your Druchii, what makes them special is they have the Murderous Euphoria passive. So as they fight, that is going to continue to build up their damage, build up their leadership, and then at stage 3, they are going to weaken enemies, which the imbuement is not showing exactly what that does, so we may have to just go ahead and show that off in a fight. Throw them in for a while. Hopefully they can fight for long enough, because it does take 25 seconds to get fully going. But once it is, 50 seconds total to get fully going. But once it is up and running, then you're weakening foes and they're having a bad time. Being Slaanesh marked, of course, they have Strider, immune to psychology, 20% physical resistance, and then 25% missiles. So they're very good at dueling, but again, they just kind of fulfill the same role as your Slaangors, so it really comes down to just how potent that weakened contact effect is, which we'll show off here while I'm talking. Then we move on to the Devotees of Slaanesh with Crossbows, which have the same exact flavor text and the same exact stats exactly. The only difference between them and your other is that they have a 130 range crossbow that is going to shoot 1 bolt, dealing 20 damage, majority armor piercing. They are your one and only true missile infantry for Slaanesh, and they do a decent job. 20 damage is pretty low. I would actually like to see that get somewhere closer to what your Shades have, which I think they start at like 28 to 30. Since they are Shades, they definitely shouldn't be losing damage. One of the cool things about them is their crossbows look exquisite. Look at these things. They're like a more stripped down and almost more refined version of the normal Druchii crossbow, but for whatever reason it just doesn't do as much damage, which I think needs to be changed. They need to at least deal similar or close to similar damage to Shades in order to make them worth it. Onward though to a unit that doesn't need any smack talk, and if you were to provide it, they would be at your door very shortly with a strongly worded letter at the very least. The Pleasureseekers are your premier cavalry for Slaanesh. These are our monstrous cavalry finally. They are your kind of analog to the Rot Beasts and your Juggernauts for Khorne. Pleasureseekers, such are the contradictory forces these creatures evoke. Tearing oneself apart would be a mercy, one they will not grant you. You get 32 of these murderous ladies and their well-dressed snakes. They have 30 armor, a bronze shield blocking 20% of missile fire headed their way, so they will still be fairly susceptible to any missiles, especially magical missiles headed their way. That is their primary weakness. They have 70 leadership, 100 speed, so they're quite quick. That's 100 speed is the same as you get, of course, for the demonic steeds that your heroes are mounted upon. They have 46 melee attack, 55 defense, 60 weapon strength, with the majority of that being armor piercing and 60 charge bonus, so that gets boosted up to 120 when smashing into the flank. For their unique abilities, they have Feasting on Fear, so as enemies start to waver around them, they will continuously heal, and that will build up in intensity as more and more units start to waver, so you keep them into the middle of a group that's already starting to go away. Once they break, your Pleasureseekers will start to turn on the healing faucet quite quickly. They have the Vanguard deployment, so they're very versatile in where you deploy them in the start of your battle. Strider, of course, devastating flanker as demons, 20% physical resistance, and then causes fear. I kind of would like them to cause terror. Pretty much anything you throw these ladies into combat with that isn't fully dedicated anti-large is going to have the ever-living brakes beaten off of them by these brass-tipped snake tails. Only thing they really struggle with, like I said, is dedicated anti-large and any kind of missile fire. But if you can give them attacks, they are going to kind of have the same chariot effect, where they'll charge through enemies and smash apart anything in their way while they're in their charge animations. So it makes them a very scary cavalry unit. And where I do like the Pleasureseekers, I feel like the champions of Slaanesh actually deal more damage and are going to kill units even faster. So let's take a look and see what exactly makes them special. So they've got 16 models there. They're basically your aspiring champions, but instead of equipped with heavy armor and shields, they are instead snake people with a blade in 4 hands. They're awesome. 60 armor, a bronze shield that blocks 30% of missile fire headed their way. You always have to kind of pull this up, because it's even if it's a bronze shield, it can be up to, I think, 40% before it changes to a silver one. They've got 65 speed, which is incredible. Not quite as much as the Pleasureseekers, which is where they're going to kind of edge these snake lads out, is that just the speed in general. 52 melee attack, which is going to be magical and great for dealing with other demons. 55 defense, and then a 20 bonus for infantry, majority armor piercing, 40 charge bonus, and then the combination of hide in forest, of course. Pretty much every unit can hide in the forest. We've got Strider, Devastating Flanker, Masque of Slaanesh, to let us know that we have all those different passives. 20% physical resistance, and the Siege Attacker. These are a elite infantry killer, and also will take down most of your footlords and heroes. There's not many footlords and heroes that can stand up to them in a fight, and once they arrive, and especially if they can smack you from the side, you're gonna suffer immensely. Our last base game unit to show off is the Preyton, Slaanesh's flying anti-large champion, and here's where all of our anti-large was hiding. It was hiding with the Preyton. So if you take a look here, we've got Dark Cunning lures the hunter into the forest depths, where awaits an ambush of blood-red eyes and savage fangs. This is going to be a large entity target, of course, with 2800 mass. We've got medium armored, very good speed, offensively statted with poison attacks, armor-piercing damage, and 20 bonus v large. 40 charge bonus gets doubled to 80 thanks to Devastating Flanker, and then we've got a couple of abilities here, All-Consuming Hatred, which is an activated, kind of interesting style of defense, where instead there of defense, you're going to let the opponent hit you, because by dropping 24 melee defense, you're going down to 4 melee defense total, which is simply insane. They're almost guaranteed to hit you, unless they just themselves have garbage attack. Once they do hit you, though, they're going to be dealing quite a bit of that damage back to them with a 28 melee reflection. The innate hatred carried within a Preyton makes it despise itself almost as much as its foes, whose attacks are repaid with added enmity. It's got wounds, of course, Frenzy for dealing even more damage as long as its leadership is higher than 50% of base, the Endless Malice passive for 25% more damage and 8 more melee attack as long as there is an enemy unit routing within 35 meters, makes them, like most of your Slaanesh units in this DLC, very good at running down routing foes or just boosting themselves up if there's another routing foe nearby to smash into someone else. They can fly, of course, have 20% physical resistance, 45% missile resistance, which makes them incredible at soaking up arrows, and then they cause terror, which makes them really, really good at affecting leadership. Your Preyton is a really good unit, good to have in just about every single army, because in any force that doesn't have access to lots of missiles, because even with those Devotees of Slaanesh, that's not a lot of missiles. You do want really, really punchy flyers that can kind of go completely bypass someone's front line or any kind of halberdiers or anti-large they have and get straight into those damage dealers, which the Preyton is good at. Sticking here with our Preytons, but moving along to the Regiment of Renown units, we have the Scourge of Arden, this glowing-eyed monstrosity. It looks awesome, doesn't it? We can get this back in like the forest with like the... Can we not do it here? Let's see if we can find in the trees here. Do you not see the glowing eyes from this far back? Oh, you can. Look how thematic that's going to look on the battlefields. Yes, the Scourge of Arden. Get back over here, you. We need to learn what makes you, you. So it has almost equal stats to your normal Preyton. The only thing that makes it different is it has Strider. So it's going to ignore any kind of combat penalties caused by terrain, just allowing it to fight in forests and things without taking that normal penalty that your flying units take. You'll have to let me know if you think that's enough to make this a Regiment Renowned. We've got some that are worse, for sure. We've got some that are worse. Moving on to the Pleasure Guard, which are these white-cloaked champions of Slaanesh. They've got a little bit more purpley tinge to their skin on the top of their heads. I don't know if their brains are poking through or what's going on there, but they're definitely more doctor-themed. Crossing the ever-retreating boundaries of wickedness has, for some Slaaneshi champions, become a sport that makes excess the end, rather than means. They are almost identical to your other Slaaneshi champions. These simply deal more damage and have the unyielding assault trait, so they can never have its melee attack reduced during battle. It means any buffs you give it will stay for the entire fight, and it also has the unbreakable traits. They'll stick around and fight till the bitter end, and they will never lose any melee attack while doing so. This makes the Pleasure Guard, honestly, your premier champions of Slaanesh. Our last unit we're covering is by no means our most elite, but they are going to be the Riders of the Mighty Serpent, some Marauder cavalry that are intoxicated by pre-battle rituals. These serpent-worshipping horsemen seem oblivious to pain and fear, singing, screaming, and charging with undulating battle cries. These are your Javelin cavalry. They are the exact same to your normal Marauder cavalry from Slaanesh. Only difference being they have the Battle Songs passive, so they're going to boost leadership and have your allies cause fear within 35 meters, as long as we have an enemy within 100. So as long as there's someone nearby to sing about and talk smack to in song form, they will do so and boost up your allies while they do. That is going to be our Slaanesh units, though. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Which of our new additions to Slaanesh's roster are your favorite? For me, it is either a combination. Well, it is easily the Pleasureseekers and the Champions of Slaanesh. They work very well in tandem, and if you slam them into a front line at the same time, there's very little they can stand against it. Like I said, though, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Which of these units is your favorite? I am out of time for today, though. Thank you all so much for stopping on by. If you enjoyed the video, please do remember to leave a like for the like god, and a sub for the sub throne, and I'll see you all in the next one.